I agree with the ARK Invest analysis that autonomous transport is called sort of a $5 to $7 trillion market cap situation. Optimus, I think, is a 25, literally $25 trillion market cap situation. So.
That's Elon at Tesla's most recent shareholder meeting, which happened on June 13th this year. You've probably seen a few clips from that event, mostly centered around his pay package.
I just want to start off by saying, hot damn, I love you guys.
Or his goofy dance moves. But he also gave some really key insights into the future of Tesla. But on this channel, we try to reduce the noise and talk about businesses to see if we want to invest in them or not. And his recent plans were incredibly ambitious. He talked about getting Tesla up to a $30 trillion valuation, which is about 60 times larger than the company is today. We should caveat this with the fact that Elon making premature claims isn't exactly uncommon. He's got a bit of a track record promising things way earlier than he can actually deliver them.
Now, admittedly, I'm a little optimistic sometimes. So I don't have complete lack of self-awareness. But if I wasn't optimistic, this wouldn't exist. This factory wouldn't exist.
And an important second caveat, I am a Tesla shareholder since 2016. And all of the content in this video is my opinion and should be used for informational purposes only. But even for Elon Musk's history of crazy predictions, a $30 trillion market cap is insane. For context, the whole market cap of the S&P 500, which, as you probably know, is the 500 largest companies in the United States, is $45 trillion. So this would mean that Tesla would take up almost 2/3 of the entire market cap. We have never seen a company have that much market share, even in the days of Standard Oil. So how do we get there? Well, fortunately, during his keynote, Elon spoke pretty openly to us as shareholders, which is something we love to see our CEOs do. He first outlined his plan on how to get to a $5 trillion market cap, and then he would go on to outline how he could get to 30 trillion. We'll first talk about how to get to 5 trillion, and then we'll talk about the road to 30 trillion. This one will be jam-packed. Let's dive into it.
I think we're not just opening a new chapter for Tesla, we're starting a new book. Okay.
All right, we'll start with the road to 5 trillion. And just again, as a reminder, a $5 trillion market cap would be the size of Apple and Amazon combined. So even though this isn't as big as where he ultimately wants to go, this is still an incredibly ambitious idea and implies an upside that Tesla would be 5 times larger than it is today. Here's how Elon thinks that he can achieve this $5 trillion market cap.
How do you go from this big fleet to actually monetizing the fleet in an autonomous situation? And it's actually a combination of it's like Airbnb and Uber to some degree. So there'll be some cars that Tesla owns itself, and it's kind of like an Uber fashion. But then for the fleet that is owned by our customers, it will be like an Airbnb thing. You can add or subtract your car to the fleet whenever you want. Your car gets added to the fleet, and it just makes money for you while you're gone. And I'm highly confident that it will far exceed the value, the revenue made by the owner of the car will far exceed the actual monthly payment. And then Tesla will obviously take a rev share on that, and this is actually going to work. This is what will happen. So mark my words, this is simply a matter of time.
And then he tells us to get to the numbers that we should look at ARK's analysis.
I'd recommend reading the ARK Invest analysis. That's the most accurate. There may be more accurate ones, but the most accurate sort of analysis of the potential of autonomy.
So let's do just that. When we pull it up, we can see that ARK is expecting a stock price of $2,600 with a bear case of $2,000 and a bull case of $3,100 per share. They do mention that this is inclusive of autonomy, and that without autonomy, they set the share price to $350, which is almost double what Tesla's currently trading at. For being their absolute worst case scenario, this is still a pretty crazy price target, as it implies the company would be worth over $1 trillion, which is larger than all of the automotive companies combined. Anyway, they estimate that by 2029, 90% of Tesla's enterprise value will be due to robotaxis. And they include this graphic to help us see what revenue, EBITDA. EBITDA. How on earth do you ignore depreciation on a robotaxi fleet? That makes no sense, and I hate EBITDA so much.
I think you would understand any presentation using the word EBITDA if every time you saw that word, you just substituted the phrase bullshit earnings.
But I get their point. They're basically saying that because a component of the robotaxi service is a two-sided marketplace that has no capital expenditures from Tesla, since it's other people leasing out their EVs, that it'll have significantly higher margins than the significant capital expenditures required to produce an electric vehicle. So, sure. Okay, then I'm going to jump ahead to the next section of this article because ARK kind of delivers the punchline sooner. And I think it's important to qualify their assumptions first. Off the top, ARK assumes that there is at least a 50% chance that Tesla will launch a robotaxi service within the next 2 years, and that the probability that they fail to do so in the next 5 years is de minimis, which by definition means too trivial or minor to merit consideration. I'll keep saying it, this seems incredibly bullish. You think that the US transportation system is going to pivot that quickly, that the NHTSA is going to greenlight autonomous vehicles with almost certainty in the next 5 years, especially where things stand, there's so much scrutiny against it. But whatever, let's keep going. ARK does get a little bit more tied to reality, and I actually like this section a lot. They tell us that Tesla is accumulating training data quicker than just about any of their competitors, and that they have about 110 times the training data that Waymo has. And this makes sense when you think about it. They have tons of cars on the road collecting driving data today. Then they also mention that the rate of this data collection is also accelerating. In the newly released Full Self-Driving version 12, Tesla transitioned to a neural network that learns from video data and directly controls the vehicle, eliminating over 300,000 lines of manual code. And I agree with ARK's analysis here. I own a Tesla, and version 12 Full Self-Driving is pretty magical. But there's no way I would trust it without me in the driver's seat. So with all that, and remember this is just exploring the robotaxi business, ARK intentionally calls out that they ignore the supercharging network, full self-driving licensing capabilities, AI as a service, and other things are not included in this analysis. They do give a call out for the potential upside that Optimus could deliver, but I actually think Elon's description is better. So we'll save that for a moment. But yeah, they do give us the punchline of these bull and bear outcomes by way of a revenue breakdown. They say that by 2029, at the low end, Tesla should be able to sell 5.8 million cars that year, which, wow, that's up from 1.8 million today. And the biggest beef that I have from this table is that they say autonomous ride hailing should rake in almost $1 trillion in revenue by 2029. At first glance, saying that a company can just spawn $1 trillion in revenue seems, again, a bit disconnected from reality. But I'm not necessarily not buying it. But again, to anchor us in reality, Walmart is currently the company that has the highest revenue of any other company in the world. They only have $611 billion in revenue. So this analysis is assuming that Tesla will be able to just spawn a Walmart and a half in the next 6 years. Calling this just bullish is the understatement of the year. I would say that sycophantic perhaps could be a better word. Okay, so that's how Tesla might be able to get to a $5 trillion market cap. But that's a pretty far way off from getting us to $30 trillion. And again, fortunately, Elon is actually really specific here. Here's his breakdown.
I think the ratio of humanoid robots to humans will probably be at least 2 to 1, something like that. I think the build rate will be probably something ultimately like 1 billion a year, humanoid robots, like actually. And if Tesla just has a 10% share of that, and it might be a lot more than 10%. I mean, for reference, the auto industry is roughly 100 million vehicles per year. I think we could make one for a cost of maybe, at really high scale, of about $10,000. It's smaller, it'll be less expensive than a car. And I think if you sell it for $20,000 or something, this is at large scale volume, Tesla would basically make about $1 trillion of profit a year from that. So, yeah. If the price earnings multiple is, say, I don't know, 20 or 25, something like that, that would mean a $20 trillion market cap from Optimus alone. And probably 5 to 10 from autonomous vehicles.
And that's how he plans to get Tesla to a whopping $30 trillion market cap. Is this possible? Well, here's what he thinks Optimus could do.
When you think about the Optimus robot, which is really a humanoid robot that is intended to, be able to do anything you want it to do, to be, your companion. It can be at your house. It can sort of babysit your kids. It could teach them. It could be a teacher. It can do factory stuff.
If we look at Optimus today, it seems like we're a really long way off of this. But when we look at how quickly the technology is improving, Optimus Gen 2, which came out in December of 2023, has some pretty advanced features that separate it from Gen 1. And further, and I think this is kind of a key point, I believe that AI will accelerate the development of robotics pretty drastically. So this actually might be somewhat possible. After all, it is a bad idea to doubt Elon and his companies. I do think the 30 trillion, even the 5 trillion is pretty outlandish, but I would absolutely be in the market for an Optimus. I wouldn't want it to watch my kids, as he said, but if I could have a robot that could do all the things that I don't like doing around the house, like dishes, cleaning, laundry, I'd be interested in purchasing that product. And I think a lot of other people would as well. And that's not even talking about the commercial applications of it. Or as one of the users in our Discord pointed out, I could use my car as a robotaxi and have my Optimus get delivered over to someone else's house who needs some work done. And I could make money off of my Optimus. That's a really cool value proposition and does get at that Uber Airbnb idea that Elon's playing with. And finally, Elon talks about how Tesla is one of the only companies in the world that is capable of producing a robot like this at scale and at a cost that isn't supremely high. So yeah, I'm pretty intrigued by this idea. And I'm not an Elon stan. I'm actually pretty critical of him, especially as a long-term shareholder. So with that, let's go into some of the risks I see. Okay, the first one is that he can't deliver on time, which I think is actually a pretty serious risk, seeing as his history of it. But let's assume that he does ultimately deliver. His numbers that he's proposing are pretty insane, so the demand for this could be significantly less than what he thinks. And demand is a function of multiple things, right? It could be that everyone wants an Optimus, but perhaps there are some unforeseen pricing constraints that restricts Tesla from selling this thing at $20,000 or $30,000, and maybe it is an $80,000 robot. That would lock a lot of people out. The other things that I believe are hurting growth at Tesla is in some way Elon himself. He recently got his $56 billion pay package approved by shareholders. And while I agree that this was the right thing to do, I voted in favor for his last package and to recertify it this past year. I do not like, and I mentioned this in our last Tesla video, I do not like that he was acting like a complete toddler by saying that if he didn't get this pay package approved, he would rip out all of the AI from Tesla and leave the company. That is not an acceptable way to treat shareholders. And when you think about how rich Tesla has already made him, it seems like a character flaw. And that $56 billion pay package is significant. That's about 10% of the current market cap of the company. And then the second biggest risk I see is that if we look at Tesla today, despite all of the innovations that the company has and all of the other ways that they say they can make money by underwriting their own insurance, by their supercharging network, by solar roofs, if we look at the company today, the vast majority of their revenue is from the sale of electric vehicles. And their market capitalization as an automotive company is currently astronomical. So everything discussed in this video is a really far way away from where the company is today. And if we look at Flank, we can see some analysis that breaks down exactly where these revenue streams fall today. To get access to this analysis and dozens of other analysis, consider joining our Patreon where we're giving early access to the Flank platform. So in all, I don't think that there's a compelling reason for me to increase my stake today. I think that there's a good chance that the company continues to sell off. And if it falls enough, I absolutely will be buying more. And I'm sure that this is not the last time I'll be talking about Tesla on this channel or in our Flank community. It's a fascinating company and they're doing really important things, but I'm not sure if we're getting peak Elon. And for this next book, as Elon claims, we're going to need peak Elon. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing. We here at Flank are on a mission to tangibly reduce the wealth gap by empowering individual investors and restoring stakeholder capitalism. We'll see you next time.